right, are we in for a good one today or what? We're talking hand action throughout the golf swing, and what hand action is right for you? Let's dive into it. All right, guys, listen, I am pretty excited for this particular YouTube session with us here today, just because we've got this absolutely awesome training aid that was just sent to us from HackMotion. And if you know us at all, you definitely understand that we are not massive fans of quantitative information. Really, we're like big time into the qualitative, just the overall mapping of the golf swing, what the golf swing really looks like, and how to build a golf swing in a pattern that is incredibly repeatable, and you can go out and play golf with it. At the same time, what's wonderful is even though you have this mapping of what it is that you're wanting to do in your golf swing, what's important still is to be able to understand what is actually happening in your golf swing. And even though you might have some great ideas and you're looking to get into certain patterns, whether it's foot action, leg action, hand action in this particular case, it's really nice to have information that's relayed back to you that lets you know if you're actually doing that thing or not. So thanks so much to HackMotion for sending this over. And if you really like this video, guys, what I would really suggest you do is just go check out their information. They've got some really great aids, and depending on the level of player, the information that you're really wanting, they've got aids that will help you with those numbers that are needed so that you can really understand grip, understand what's going on at the top of your swing in transition, understand what's going on through the impact area. It's all freaking really cool stuff. So I would encourage you to take a look at it. So let's go ahead and dive in here. And what I'm going to do is have this up on our screen at the same time here. And what you'll notice is I've got this whole, like our main page here when you first go onto the app. And we're obviously going to hop into full swing today. And what I'd like to do is I'm going to set up a custom practice for me. Set up new practice, continue, and then we're in here. So what's really cool, like immediately, you can tell that it shows you just flexion and extension here, ulnar and radial deviation when it comes to hand action. And then when you actually get into your practice, now you're going to have all of these various readings from flexion to extension states, ulnar to radial deviation, and rotation of the club through the hit, which is really awesome feedback. And the other thing that's really cool here, we might look at later on, is what's called timing. And it's really just understanding this idea of the ratio of your away swing to forward swing speed dynamic. And every single player, with very few exceptions, that are high level players on tour, whether it's LPGA Tour or PGA Tour, you are going to find that they are a 3-to-1 or very close to that 3-to-1 ratio when it comes to the amount of time from setup to the end of the away swing. So this is a 3-click to 1-click back into impact when it comes to their overall rhythm, which is a really cool idea or concept to better understand. And so this will track all of this information. Now, for the purpose of what I would really like to cover today, we're going to be focused on flexion and extension and radial and ulnar throughout the course of the swing. And in particular, we'll really highlight this flexion to extension state throughout the course of the swing. And we get these questions a freaking ton when we swing, when we're looking at comments or questions that come into our online academy or my personal sessions. It's more like, hey, what is the grip supposed to be? And what am I supposed to be doing up at the top? Because we see a lot of this like bow out state for some players, and then other players like Rory, there's not nearly as much bow. There's actually a little bit more cup at the top. And so it becomes like massively confusing because you're looking at this going, well, what is right and what is wrong? And the truth is there really isn't necessarily a right and a wrong. in golf swings. It just depends on what you are needing out of the ball. That's the most important thing. And before we really like dive in here, if we look at like the LPGA Tour compared to the PGA Tour, in general, what we are seeing is a little bit of a difference in what's going on in this, especially in this transitionary space. You'll see a lot of players on the PGA Tour have a heck of a lot more flexion state, which we call bow, at the top of their swing compared to the LPGA Tour. Now, that is not across the board, but that is a tendency. And I would really urge you to take a look at the LPGA Tour and find anybody out there that has bow or flexion state at the top of their swing. If you find some, definitely send them over, because I would love to take a look at those players, but really they would be an anomaly. Whereas we've got all these players, Brooks Koepka, DJ, Hovland, Morikawa, all these guys on tour who bow the club a heck of a lot more at the top. So the question is then, why do they do that? What is the purpose of that, and how is it going to affect the rest of the swing, especially the hit? So if I go ahead and just hit a few here, just to go ahead and take a look at what readings would show in Hack, you'll see here immediately, and this is kind of neat because I'm throwing a whole bunch of greens here, which is kind of fun, but we've got the address position, the top, and impact when it comes to the flexion or extension state here. And what that's showing, if we have a plus in any one of those categories, that is an extension state in the wrist. And if we have a negative in any one of those categories, we have a flexion state. And then if you look down here below, right underneath the flexion and extension, we've got ulnar versus radial deviation. What ulnar and radial is more looking at what's going on in the wrist when it comes to hinging the golf club more vertically here. So I always think of this as like a hammer exercise. If I was holding onto a hammer and I loaded the hammer, I'm going to move into more of a radial state. If I unload the hammer, I'm moving more into an ulnar state. Now, at the end of the day, what we're going to see, and you'll see this at the address position compared to the top, compared to impact. We start in an amount of ulnar. Every single player on earth is going to start in ulnar at address, and every single player on earth is going to work into some amount of radial at the top. Everybody's a little bit different here, and we'll discuss why as we motor through this in this particular video. As I'm talking about this video could take frickin' 6 hours. We could get so deep into a lot of these categories and the combinations of all of these various movements. Okay, and then when we get back into impact, we go back into ulnar again for a number of different reasons. Now, one of the characteristics, that's kind of a stock swing for me. You'll notice that I start, if we go back to flexion and extension, at an address position of plus 24. If we just look at the grip to start with here, the stronger my grip, so let's say I'm Matthew Fitzpatrick. See how the emblem is almost pointing out towards the camera? Look at the state of extension here when I start. I'm up in the plus 30 category. The weaker that I go this way, which is going to be more and more supination of the lead arm or lead hand, you'll see that now I supinate more, but what that leads to is way less extension. So you're going to almost have a neutral state here if you're weak like Morikawa compared to Rory or Fitzpatrick, who grip the golf club a heck of a lot stronger. Now, typically, not always, but typically what we will see is if we have a player that's weaker in the grip, what they are going to need is a heck of a lot more flexion state at the top to manage the face. And the reason for this is if I'm extremely strong here, let's say I'm Fitzpatrick, and now at the top, I bow this, look at the amount of rotation that I'm going to have in the face, and all of a sudden the face almost becomes like out of bounds when it comes to how strong the face would be. It'd be too closed up here for me to be able to manage that down at the bottom. Now that's not 100% of the time because we see that category a bit with DJ. That's why DJ's club face gets so strong at the top, because he almost doubles it up. Now it allows him to have a very stable hit through the strike, because if I've got it doubled up with strength, because if I grip it this way, meaning pronated at the start, a bit more extension, so strong grip, and then I go up here and I bow this and I move into more extension, I've just doubled up the strength of the club. So what I would have to do through the strike is unload the golf club almost exclusively with an extension, or excuse me, a flexion to extension pattern through the strike, which is a very, very low rate of rotation in the club face through the hit when we're unloading the club. That is a type of release. Whereas with a Rory type pattern, he has a bit of a strong state in this grip. And at the top, he'll throw more radial, so it keeps this extension state, kind of like my last one did. And the toe kind of droops, but the golf club is in a pretty neutral state up here at the top. So as he changes direction and now releases, he's going to have more rotation in his arms to go ahead and square the club. Now, is that a bad thing? No, not at all. And again, like, yeah, can we argue, especially now, Rory's history when it comes to what he's done in his golf career? He's an incredibly high-level player. Former world #1, Grand Slam champion, will probably be #1 player in the world again at some point. But then we're describing DJ, who is also a former #1 player in the world. So looking at these two athletes and going, well, that one's right and this one's wrong is a bit, in my opinion, naive. Instead, what we should look at is, why does DJ's pattern work and why does Rory's pattern work? That's a better question. And then from taking that understanding of both of those types of athletes, you can start to understand what type of hand action, what type of grip in your golf swing is going to suit you best. So let's start going down this. Let's take a look at, we'll start with the LPGA Tour, so female players. Now this is just a blanket statement here, but I'm just taking a look at just the averages, what we see on the LPGA Tour compared to the PGA Tour, which we will get to, or live. Okay, so men's game versus women's game. What you'll see most of the time is a fairly neutral grip, and at the top what we will have is a golf club that loads mostly through radial, and I keep some amount of extension. And from here, what players will do is they'll lower the arms and almost adduct this lead arm as they're working into delivery, so the face stays fairly neutral. It's definitely not strong here, so the leading edge almost sticks straight up and down. And now through the hit, as they rotate their body, what they'll do is they'll tend to rotate the upper arms and the forearms through the strike. So we will see a pattern that looks more in that type of a range. Now, when we look at this, I started at plus 23 at the top. I had plus 26, so still plenty of extension, almost the exact same amount of extension at the top. And then through the hit, as I go from a more pronated state, which is also an internal state with this lead humerus, and work through the strike, as I supinate, what ends up happening, and you'll see this in the reading right now, I have minus 11 in flexion, meaning that I've gone from a bit of a cup state to a bit of a bowed state through the hit. You will see that type of a pattern on the LPGA Tour, almost exclusively. Now, on the PGA Tour, you'll still see some of that. You see that in Rory, you see that in a player like Jimmy Walker, or Webb Simpson, any one of those players who have more of a neutral state here, meaning from the start to the top, we almost maintain that same amount of extension. But then there's other players like Hovland, DJ, Koepka, these types of players. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with just a neutral type grip here. Okay, so I'm not going to go weak and I'm not going to go strong. I'm just going to be relatively neutral. Just to define that a bit further, the crease from your lead carpal bone and the thumb, this line right here, points over towards my trail clavicle or my right shoulder complex. If it points outside of that, that's leaning into a stronger category of grip. If it's a little bit more into my midline, that's a weaker style grip. So I'm just going to start relatively neutral here. And what I'm going to show here is a heck of a lot more flexion state. You'll see how much stronger the face is at the top and what those readings will show. Okay, so now I went from plus 23 at address. At the top I went to minus 1. Okay, which is a heck of a lot stronger there, and then at impact I'm at minus 4. So what's interesting is I'm going from a stronger position here with more flexion state in the wrist, and then to get into the strike, I almost maintain that same amount of flexion state by the time I'm at the strike. Now, what we will be at post-impact, working into, if we understand the P system, P7 is impact, P8 is where the shaft gets back level to the ground, P9 is where the trail arm gets level to the ground. We would actually move more into an extension state there with the release of the club. And so what we'll see is a difference between neutral, meaning that we're at whatever the last number was, plus 23. I'm roughly at plus 23 at the top. So all I've done to load the club is worked into a radial load. If you're my target, what we're going to see is a release pattern that looks more like this. See how the toe starts to flash over? I'm going to throw more supination in the lead hand to go ahead and square that golf club. Compared to me starting at relatively neutral, plus 23-ish, and when I get to the top, I go to 0 or -1 like the last rep. If I do that and work back through the strike, the way that I'm going to manage the club is more from a flexion state to extension state in the lead wrist, and look at the club face there. See how it doesn't tumble as much? So, question is, what is going to suit me better? If you're the athlete going, well, which pattern is right for me? Let's take a look at what we're going to find again on the LPGA Tour. LPGA Tour ball flight is typically a block, so the ball starts slightly right of their alignment target, block draw, that's medium height. So we won't see things that you won't see on the LPGA Tour, primarily cut style patterns. Doesn't mean that they can't cut it, it just means that their neutral or stock ball is a bit more of a block draw. We'll also see higher and mid-flight patterns out there on the LPGA Tour compared to the PGA Tour. Let's take Hovland as a really great example. Hovland, for a number of years, historically, has hit a lower ball, slightly pull, cut type pattern. Neiman, slightly lower, can hit it both ways type pattern. DJ, cut type pattern. Now, ball flight still gets in the air, but that's because he has such high ball speed. If you have 180 mile an hour ball speed at a 10 launch, that ball still is going to apex at roughly 100, 115. Whereas Koepka, same thing, 180 mile an hour ball speed, 10 launch, we're going to have the same type of apex. So the apex might still be high, 100 to 115 feet in the air, whereas LPGA Tour players might still get it up there in that 90, 100, sometimes even a little bit higher than that range, but they're launching the golf ball at 14, 15, 16 degrees. So it's more the dynamic of the hit and what I need, because LPGA Tour ball speed on average is 140, compared to the PGA Tour on average we're roughly at 170 now. So we have a 30 mile an hour ball speed difference. And if we're looking at some of these players, not all of these players, but some of these players on the PGA Tour, the reason that they are managing the release from a lead wrist flexion to extension state is because it lowers the rate of rotation in the club face. So it doesn't tumble as much. The shaft isn't rolling along the plane as much. It's almost gliding or sliding the bottom portion of the club along that plane as they work forward. So if you are a player that's fairly explosive with ball speed, what I would encourage you to do is move towards more of a state where we're bowing or flexing this lead wrist by the time you get to the top. And the way that you'll feel that is if I'm in, again, just a neutral-ish state at address. When I spin the golf club up, or when I leverage the club, I'm going to spin the club up and look at how the face starts to point away, and look at my numbers. I'm -12 right now with flexion. When I start, I'm at +18. Whoosh, right up here. Now, in the transition, we've talked about this before, for high speed ball speed players, we almost want to keep this same amount of flex, if not increase the flexion state, because I'm moving the golf club down this coronal plane over to my trail side. So if I do that from down the line, the whole idea here would be more turn the chest, spin the club up, so now see the flex state of that lead wrist. If I supinate this trail wrist to move the club down this coronal plane, look at what happens to this state here. I'm at negative 26 right now, which is a ton. So what does that allow me to do through the hit? Well, as I turn, I go from a flex state to an extension state through the strike. So these little bitty chippers, I'm going to go here, boom, boom, and we'll take a look at what that looks like. Again, fairly neutral at the start, plus 20. I got it to -1 at the top, and impact, you can see how I'm starting to unload the golf club from this flexion to extension state. That's going to slow, dramatically slow, the rate of rotation through the strike, meaning the club face is not going to tumble severely. Now when I did that, you see with my swing, how slow I had to go just to pattern build. Okay, now again, this is leaning into high ball speed type of players. That's what we're looking for sometimes with those types of players. And I would encourage you, if you're that type of player, to play with this. And we don't need to be one or the other. You can just lean into this just a bit. If you are younger, female, I would encourage you, okay, younger or female, I would encourage you to be more in a state where we're going to leverage the golf club. If I turn here, well, if I just start here again, I'm going to leverage the golf club right in here. Now, you'll notice I'm starting, if I get on here correctly, boom, at about plus 16. If I leverage the golf club up, see I'm at plus 27, that's a little bit too much. And the reason is if I only show radial, what tends to happen is you'll move from radial. If I keep pressuring radial, you'll start to move into more extension, which is what you're seeing right here. See where I'm starting? Plus 11, radial, 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 goes into more extension. Now I'm at plus 30. So be careful with how much radial you throw because eventually it leaks into that extension state. If I do too much of that, you see how now the club droops too much and it's too open. I still need to manage it to a certain degree so that I have a proper amount of strength, but you'll notice even here, I'm at plus 5. I still have enough of this extension state now that through the hit I can go ahead and release the golf club with a little bit more tumble in the shaft, which is completely fine. So let's take a look at this type of a pattern. We're going to go here. And I can definitely feel, folks, like how that golf club is releasing and rotating through the strike. And here at address, I'm at plus 16. At the top, I'm at plus 21, so I actually added a little bit of extension state there. And through the strike, notice I'm at -4, which means that I'm tumbling that golf club down. The more that I supinate this, the more that leaks into a flexion state in that lead wrist. That pattern right there is a draw style pattern. Now, to conclude this video, because I think this is plenty, we're like diving deep into like these massive numbers here. On the LPGA Tour, what we tend to see is a player from here who lowers the arms, and because of this, they need to take their pelvis, laterally move it towards the target, and rotate the pelvis here. So you'll see how much I'm moving laterally because of the pelvis, and the chest isn't a primary driver for rotation. So as I'm lowering here, there goes the pelvis, and now the way that I'm going to square it is because of the upper arms rotating and almost acting like pinwheels across my chest. You'll see how the upper arms are rolling across the chest here. When I do that, from right here, lower and rotate the pelvis and pin the chest back, you'll notice where the rotation or the release sends the golf club. See how it's more of a gradual look when it comes to the rotation state of the club and the release state of the club. It doesn't radically move left. That type of a pattern or mapping in golf swing is a great way to hit block draws that have a little bit more tumble in the ball. So for lower bat speeds, it's a great way to launch the ball a bit higher, start it to the right, and the ball will tend to tumble back onto the target line, boom, 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 and chases out. Now, if you're a player that's looking to get the golf ball down a bit more, primarily lean a little bit more into a cut bias pattern, what we're going to have to do is move more into a flex state here as I'm going to the top. From here, we need to move the golf club and shallow it a bit. There's a number of different ways to do this. We have a ton of videos on this concept on our YouTube, but we can do that from internal rotation of this lead arm. I can do it with supination of this trail hand. As long as I keep it in extension, I can move the golf club in this manner. I can also do it by bouncing bends from lead bend to trail bend. There's a number of different ways to shallow off the golf club. And in essence, what I'm doing is I'm just keeping the club on my trail side, so now I can turn the chest to go ahead and square the face. If I'm doing that, the pelvis needs to stay more underneath me. It doesn't actively rotate up and pressure towards the target. It will almost drop more as I'm shallowing, and now my chest and my trunk can motor the golf club into the strike. So you see this definitely out of a Hovland bias pattern, a DJ type pattern, Lucas Glover, those guys, right? Lee Trevino, compared to Nelly Korda, Rory McIlroy, Scheffler. They're different patterns, and again, I am not saying that there's a right one and a wrong one here at all. Do we sometimes have preferences based on health of movement? Of course, and we talk about that a ton, but when it comes to just managing the ball, every single player that I've mentioned today manages the golf ball at such an incredibly high level. It's wonderful being able to watch these players play because they hit just amazing shots. So is there a one-size-fits-all for swinging the club? Absolutely not. But where I would encourage you to start with this video is just what type of player am I? And what type of player do I choose to be? And kind of what sort of capabilities do I have? Do I have the capability of earning 170, 180, 190 mile an hour ball speed? Or am I a player that's gonna maybe cap at 110, 120, 140 mile an hour ball speed? The breaking point is probably in the 155 mile an hour ball speed. Somewhere in there is where you want to start to take a look at like which end of the spectrum do I want to start to fall when it comes to my grip and the hand action throughout the entirety of the swing, especially here in transition, so that it affects how you're able to release the golf club. So again, thanks so much to HackMotion. I hope that this video helped you guys. If you have any questions on any of the information that I presented today, comment below, definitely subscribe to our channel. We'd love to help you. We answer every single question on here, and if you want to take it to the next level, I would definitely encourage you to take a look at our online platform, X Factor Golf. You can find the link to that website in our bio right here on our YouTube. Look forward to seeing you soon. Hit some great shots for me.